Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Don't you understand, George? It's because you were not born.
Film church.
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
It's not hard to die well. The hard thing is to live well.
Buongiorno, and welcome to Film Church Radio. This is the podcast that treats cinema as a religion. It's Sunday, I'm Lewis.
And I'm Branden.
And we are here to talk about movies. Each week, Branden and I alternate picking a film for us both to watch and discuss. Today, I picked the film Rome Open City from 1945, directed by Roberto Rossellini. This is a film that neither Branden and I had watched before. It's something that I think the Italian film we haven't watched any for Film Church Radio. So this is the first Italian film. And also it's from a period that I'm really interested in, which is the Second World War in cinema and how it's represented. There's a lot of things to say about this film, and I think it's had a lot of influence kind of moving forward, so I'm excited to talk to Branden about it. And if you want to hear what we're going to be discussing next week, stick around till the end of the show and Branden will reveal. But before we jump into the film, we'd like to say thank you to everyone who's been listening to the podcast and sending their love for the show. If you're new here, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We put an episode out every Sunday. And as we said before, Branden and I alternate picking films. So there's a lot of variation there for us all to get involved in and enjoy during this cinematic odyssey that we're going through. You can find us on all social medias at Film Church Radio. Leave us a comment, leave us a like, whatever you want to do. Just let us know if you listen to the show, what films you enjoy, what you'd like for us to watch in the future, all that good stuff. All our old episodes are streaming on all good podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, everywhere. So you can go and check them out. And if you want to see our faces, then we do have some content on YouTube that you can go and see whenever we have a special guest on. For the majority of the time, we record it and put it out on YouTube as a video so you can see us discuss the film in real life. If you want to support the show, there's a few ways that you can do that. Obviously, subscribe and rate it wherever you listen. If you are on Spotify right now, that is the way that Branden, we're being hosted through Spotify, so it'd be great for you to go ahead, leave a comment, leave a like, tell your friends that that's where they can find us, share it on all social medias, all that kind of stuff. We would really, really appreciate it. And as we've mentioned the last few weeks, we did have a poll that was going on for the greatest Stanley Kubrick film. Still there until the end of May, so you can go and vote. And I'm sure in the future, if you look at the episodes, we'll be doing some other stuff like that for you all to get involved and tell us what you think. Now,
I think 2001 Space Odyssey is winning now.
Cool. So the congregation is like us. We also thought that. So if you disagree strongly, now's your chance to tell us. Go and vote for your favorite. Like I said, that's until the end of May, and we'll kind of talk about it on the show once it's all wrapped up, I'm sure. Before we go ahead and discuss Rome Open City, though, we are going to go to our hymn section, which is before the main sermon, where we sing the praises of other films that we've been watching this week. Branden, I see you have a few here. So What have you been watching? What do you want to sing the praises of?
All kinds of movies. First one on the list is Caprice from 1986, which is Joanna Hogg's student film that she made with Tilda Swinton long before their collaboration on the Souvenir movies and The Eternal Daughter, which we talked about last week. Great movies. You should check them out. And yeah, I've just started to become a big fan of Joanna Hogg, so I went back and found this on YouTube. I ended up giving it 5 out of 5. It's it's not a masterpiece by any means, but like I had a great time watching it.
Yeah.
Tilda Swinton is great in it, and like the imagery is really cool. The set design, the costumes, the concepts, all of it is very expressive, especially for a student film. You don't normally see student first time filmmaker coming out of the gate swinging so hard, you know. And I'm really glad that, I mean, film careers can sometimes, you know, take weird journeys, and I think Joanna Hogg didn't make films for a long time, and then she's, you know, come back into it later in life, and I'm really glad she has, because she's making great stuff. So I'm gonna go back and watch all of her things. Yeah, you know, see how she's developed.
She worked in TV for a while, right? She did the British soap opera EastEnders. And then she did a few episodes of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, especially for female filmmakers, it's like they tend to not get greenlit as much as, especially back then, you know. Yeah. So I'm really glad that, you know, she's getting to do more now. Yeah. It's awesome. I went back and watched Time Bandits, which I was reminded of because Criterion is doing a release of it. It's from 1981, and it's such a good movie. Like, I watched it a long time ago when I was a teenager, and a friend I think a friend recommended it, or maybe I watched it with him or something. And it's such a weird, fun movie. I'm really into these kind of movies right now. I mean, it's like, it's a very like medieval, mystical kind of movie, and like the 80s were a great time for those kinds of movies, because I mean, the special effects are hit and miss with these kinds of movies, but like they're really good here. You know, I have like a big nostalgia for 80s style effects before like the CGI started to become mixed in with it. So the practical effects are amazing. The costumes are amazing. It's a Terry Gilliam film. And he did a lot of the stuff with the British comedy people. What are they called? I'm blanking right now. Let me look at Monty Python, the Monty Python guys. So you know, it's got like a weird, quirky sense of humor that just had me laughing the whole time. You know, it's like, and it's also a time travel movie. I don't want to give too much away, but have you ever seen it or heard about it?
I haven't. I know a little bit, but not. I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, it's like these time traveling little people, bandits. Yeah. And it's great. It's a really great time. I might buy it on Criterion just so I can watch it all the time. Yeah. Highly recommend. And like I said, I'm really into these kinds of movies right now, like the 80s kind of heavy special effects movies. Mad Max, as you know, I've talked about recently. So stuff like that. I finally watched The Gentleman, the Guy Ritchie film from 2019. Yeah. My girlfriend I think she had seen it in theaters, and ever since then she's been like, "Oh, you would really like this. You should watch it. You should watch it." So we finally watched it. I think it's on Netflix right now. And it's just a really great, you know, gangster film. Yeah. Guy Ritchie going back to the gangster film, and I had a great time with it, you know. It seems like there's not, I mean, it's a very niche genre, I guess, you know, like the gangster film kind of had its heyday. Well, it had a couple of heydays, I guess. You know, it had its original heyday back in like the 30s, 40s. And then people have always done gangster films here and there, but it also kind of had a resurgence, I guess, in the 90s. Yeah. Or I don't know. There's been several resurgences, I guess, now that I think about it, because like Scorsese, you know, kept doing it in the 60s and 70s, and then Tarantino in the 90s. So yeah, it's just, you know, one of those really good gangster movies, but
Awesome.
a little bit updated and newer.
Yeah.
It's a good time. And then we went and saw the Super Mario Brothers movie, and it's great. Have you seen it?
I haven't.
It's really good. I mean, it's way. I mean, I guess I probably set my expectations low, but it came out really well. Yeah, that's the most. I mean, I don't want to spoil it for anybody that hasn't seen it, but I had a great time watching it. It's got me really excited for future Nintendo movies.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we're in our 30s, so we grew up playing all of these games, and I really hope they do like a Super Smash Brothers kind of crossover Avengers style, you know, movie would be really great. Because, I mean, I played so much Super Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
Legend of Zelda, Mario, all of that stuff. And then I watched last night at the Alamo from 1983. And this is a film that has been on my watch list probably for about a year or so. And I finally watched it. It is based in Houston, which is where I live right now. So that's cool. It's like Houston in the 80s. And it stars Sonny Carl Davis, who is the guy. He's in the movie Bernie, which you know that I love. We talked about it last year. It's one of my favorite movies. Richard Linklater film. And he plays the character who's like describing Texas, like all the different states. I mean, all the different, like, you know, sections of Texas and stuff. He's obviously way younger in this movie. And really good. Like, he reminds me of Robert Duvall. Younger Robert Duvall. Just really captivating on screen, you know, really good actor. And I mean, he's been working and stuff, you know, he's not, you know, Robert Duvall status, I guess, but like, he's really good in the movie. It's worth watching just to see his performance. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I mean, it's a really good movie. It also shows like the influence that it probably had on Linklater. Yeah. Because it's it feels like kind of like Clerks and Slacker, which obviously Clerks is a Kevin Smith movie, but it's like, it's black and white. It's set in a bar that's like supposed to be demolished the next day. And so it's just about all of the different people in the town coming to the bar, and like, you know, you're just thrown in this world. You're just thrown in this world that feels lived in, like all the characters feel real. You know, you're not the movie's not like over explaining anything. You're just kind of thrown in the middle of this world. And it's accurate, you know, it's accurate to Texas and these people from Texas. And, you know, even to the point that it's like cringy, like very cringy at times, as far as like the racism and stuff that's in it. But yeah, I mean, it's also of its time, you know, it's 1983. So I think while there has been a lot of growth since then, you know, the racism was a lot more blatant back then. Yeah. It's still not great today, you know, there's still a lot of work to be done, but, you know, I think it's accurate to the time. So I appreciated it a lot, and 3.5 out of 5 on that. Nice. And that was it for me.
Awesome. That's a good selection of stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of, you know, very diverse.
Well, I've been watching some stuff as well. So I started with Sunrise, A Tale of Two Humans from 1927. This was Murnau's first American film, the director of Nosferatu and others from the German classic era of, you know, expressionism and things like that. Came over to the US and made this, and it's phenomenal. I love it so much. Like a country farmer is lured by a woman from the city, like a femme fatale, early femme fatale, who tries to convince him to drown his wife so that they can, inherit all the money and kind of move to the city, sell the farm, and, live together. Takes her out in a boat, is about to do it, decides not to, which isn't a spoiler. And they kind of go into the city together and, rediscover what it is to be in love. Yeah. It's just a really sweet, great film, bringing these sentiments from Germany over and fusing them with the American money and the scale of things. It's great. And Murnau's such a deft touch at directing. Every shot looks brilliant, and there's a lot of cool techniques that he uses to tell the story.
And Murnau did Nosferatu, right?
He did
say that. Yeah.
Yeah. He did Nosferatu. He did like Faust and other big productions in Germany. One of the first German directors to kind of be lured away over to Hollywood. Yeah. And this is like his first feature, which I think is wonderful. So I gave it 5 out of 5.
Nice.
I do think that people should check it out.
It sounds interesting. I mean, the thing in Nosferatu that really stood out to me was definitely the humanity and like the romance that's in it like really feels real. Yeah. And it's like, I mean, this is 100 years ago, and like going back to silent films isn't always my go-to. Yeah. I tend to watch newer stuff. So it always surprises me when I do go back and watch older things, how captivating they can still be sometimes. And Nosferatu definitely was that way. So I'd be interested in checking this out just to kind of see how I might connect with it.
Yeah, you definitely should. And I think that the thing with Murnau is the techniques he uses are so interesting that even if the story's a bit bland, like what's being presented to us on screen is excellent. Right. He's got an eye for a set. I mean, all the set pieces are in these really interesting kind of dimensions, and everything just feels a little expressionist, which is cool.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I rewatched The African Queen from 1951 with Bogart and Hepburn, a classic. I've seen it a few times, and my parents were in town and they kind of hadn't seen it for a while, so we decided to watch that. I bumped it down to 3.5. I recently, like the last time I watched it, I put it up to 4. And I think that I'm flip-flopping between these two areas. It's great. Bogart and Hepburn are wonderful. It does feel a bit laggy in the middle, when they're kind of, before they get to the end, it's a bit kind of like, okay, what else can we do to just stretch this bit out a little bit? And it's not like I can't wait to go back and watch that again. When we sat down and watched it, I was like, okay, I can remember quite a lot of this. And it's probably just because I've seen it more recently than I should have done, that it just felt a bit more laggy. But
you were just on a Bogart high last time you rated it.
I know, maybe that was it. Yeah. So yeah,
I've never watched it. It's I've been wanting to. I've got it on VHS. I think I've got a couple of copies on VHS for some reason. Yeah. One unopened.
Wow.
But I definitely need to watch it.
Yeah, it's worth the time. I mean, it is fun, and it's great to see roles for older stars of Hollywood, because they're both kind of getting on a bit. So it's nice to see that. But yeah, I mean, it's not. I feel like it's held in high regard, but it just doesn't. Yeah, it's not like a 5-starer for me.
Didn't it get a lot of Academy Award nominations and stuff?
I think so. Yeah, and the production of it was pretty arduous. I think it took them a lot to make it, because they actually went to Africa.
Yeah, I think we talked about this film quite a bit on our Deadline USA episode.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everybody got food poisoning apart from Bogart and the director, because they just drank all the time.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then I watched Master of the House from 1925. This was part of the Criterion Challenge that I started earlier in the year on the silent film kick. So I decided to watch it. Directed by Carl Theodor Dreyer, who did The Passion of Joan of Arc, which is a staple of silent cinema. And it's on the Criterion channel. So I was like, cool, I'll watch it. I found it a real bore. Yeah. Unfortunately. It's the first 10 minutes or so sounds so promising. Like, there's, the master of the house is he's mean to his wife and his kids, and I thought that it was going to be set up to be like, a very empowering tale of, female in the household and taking, just being appreciated for what they were doing, which seemed to be what it was setting up for. But then it's unfortunately like an hour and 40 minutes of just that single idea with the husband learning that his wife is valuable,
Yeah.
And I was like, we know, let's go. Come on, let's keep going. Yeah. And the way they did that was to maybe spoilerific, but it's not a recommendation to watch it. There was
Spoiler,
the way they did
100
that was,
years later.
Yeah, they his kind of like aunt or something came to the house to look after him, I guess. And he said that she basically abused him as a child, not in the same words, but she was really mean and punished him a lot.
Yeah.
And it was that kind of iron fist that made him see the error of his ways. And now it's kind of I don't think that we should have done that.
Yeah.
It all just felt a little off. And like I said, it's an hour and 40 minutes and it just drags. I ended up watching it at 1.5 speed on Criterion.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I think it improved it. It just felt,
well, that's like older silent films that kind of look sped up anyway,
Yeah, exactly. And it just, there was a lot of just wasted opportunities, I think. So I gave it 2 out of 5, which is not a recommendation.
It's in Criterion just because of the director?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately. I think it's probably part of that. And I was looking through Letterboxd, and there's a lot of people that think of it pretty highly. It's between 3.5 to 4 stars.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are kind of like, oh, look how this is setting the way for Passion of Joan of Arc. Look how he's focusing on the female film.
Right. Yeah.
And it's kind of like, in context, yeah, I'm sure, when you look at his full work, it could mean a lot more, but it's just a single experience of sitting down and watching it. It was just okay, this is rather boring.
Well, it's The Passion of Joan of Arc is in every film history book. It's in every film history class. It's in every film history YouTube video. Anything you watch, you're gonna see those images from The Passion of Joan of Arc. Yeah, he's an important person. He
is. Yeah. I wish I'd rewatched Passion of Joan of Arc instead of watching that. But it's ticked off, and not everything's a winner, unfortunately. And that was not a winner.
You lose.
And the last thing that I went ahead and watched was La Lante from 1934, directed by Jean Vigo, a French film. Vigo, who directed it, would die while this was being released. I think a few weeks after it was released, due to tuberculosis, I want to say off the top of my head, at age 29. So it's kind of one of his remaining films, very highly thought of, in films that are kind of always on the Sight and Sound list, and the 1001 films to see before you die and things like that. Yeah. It would make a really interesting double bill with Sunrise, which is maybe why I was drawn to it at this time.
Yeah.
A young sailor marries a country girl, and she joins him on his boat and dreams of Paris. And they come, into there's a lot of kind of tension between the two of having to work and going to Paris and things like that. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I gave it 4 out of 5. Definitely want to watch it again. Not quite sure that it's the best French film I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But yeah, enjoyable.
Nice.
Cool. But yeah, that was it. Apart from our feature presentation, I'm going to do that again because it's not feature presentation anymore. It's sermon, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, whatever. I mean, I don't know the best way to say it.
I'll just say it again, and then we can just decide.
Maybe, I don't know, feature presentation sermon?
Yeah. Feature sermon presentation. Oh, it doesn't matter. Yeah. And the only other film that I've been watching this week is our feature presentation sermon presentation. That didn't sound right. Okay, here we go. And the only other thing I've been watching this week is our main sermon for the day. Rome, Open City from 1945. The letterbox summary is our battle has barely begun. During the Nazi occupation of Rome in 1944, the leader of the resistance is chased by the Nazis as he seeks refuge and a way to escape. The way that I picked this film was I cheated and had Brandon pick a year from Letterboxd, and we picked the first film from that year that I had not seen. The year obviously was 1945, and this was the film, so it was kind of a surprise to both of us. And Brandon, what did you make of Rome Open City?
I'm going to answer that question.
Okay.
In just a moment. But first, I need to re-clarify something from the beginning of the episode. You said this was did you say this was our first Italian film?
I did.
Like, as in first Italian film ever?
As in our first Italian film that wasn't part of the Sergio Leone series.
Okay.
He thinks rapidly.
Yeah, because we did the whole Sergio Leone series, which are all Italian films. And I was thinking about Sergio Leone quite a bit while watching this because, I mean, this is from 1945, and he grew up in, he experienced Nazi-occupied Italy as a child. And, so, I mean, I'd have to go back and read his biography, but, I mean, a lot of that had a huge impact on him. And this film possibly had a huge impact on him. I mean, thinking about the kids, the group of kids that are, kind of they're kind of like the Catholic priests, bandits, basically, like little group of rebels. And that is, you see that a lot throughout Sergio Leone's films, this kind of, they're all about friendship. They're all about like these group of boys or like these two friends or like, so I have to go back and look at his biography in those early days, but Roberto Rossellini, I'm sure had to have had a big impact on him in big and small ways. I don't know, different ways. But yeah, I mean, this movie, I mean, I'd be curious to hear some feedback from our listeners, because it feels like a little like we do a lot of very obscure films or like films that people aren't talking about anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, this movie is a big deal in the film world, and but a lot of your average like movie viewer probably doesn't know this movie, probably doesn't know The Eternal Daughter that we watched a couple weeks ago, or The Holy Mountain that we watched last week. I mean, if you're a filmmaker or like a huge film nerd, like you're gonna about these movies, but like your average viewer doesn't. So but even for me as a filmmaker, like watching this movie, it was a little hard to get into. I can see the greatness there, but I think I've watched one of the Rossellini film, Paisan, during film school, and that was also a little bit hard for me to get into. I mean, Scorsese talks about Rossellini all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, he was also married to Isabella Rossellini, so like,
yeah,
there's that too. But like, you know, Scorsese is a little more in, you know, I mean, people in today's world, people know Scorsese. You know, he's still around. He's still making movies that get in theaters, and you know, and people love them. And he's a popular director. But as a filmmaker, you know, I tend to pay attention to Scorsese and what he says is good and stuff. So Rossellini is somebody I wanted to get more into. But again, it was a little bit more difficult. For one thing, the whole thing is subtitled, which I don't, you know, usually mind. It's not something I'm against, but the movie is very like, a lot of information being given in the first 30 minutes of this movie. So it's, you know, it's not boring, but it's, I mean, you can't passively watch this movie and get anything out of it. Like, you have to pay like very well attention to everything. So it was, and I'm super ADD sometimes. So it's like, I had to watch this movie in spurts the first time I watched it. I think I watched it in 2 or 3 sittings. Yeah. And had to rewind a few times to be like, okay, who am I supposed to be paying attention to in this scene? Yeah. Who are they talking about? You know, which character is what? So yeah, it took, I mean, usually when people watch films, I think a lot of times they come to them for entertainment, right? Yeah. They're not like coming to it like to do work. And this movie takes a little bit of work, you know what I mean? Because it's rich with information and historical context. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, you have to be willing to dive into the subtext and the history of this film to be able to get anything out of it. Even if it is enjoyment, like, you still have to put in a little bit of effort and work. So, and sometimes I'm very resistant to that. But you know, that's the great thing about Film Church for me, is like, it's a continuation of that kind of film school scholarly attitude towards film, where it's like, okay, well, if I'm not enjoying this, why? You know? And what are the things that are really good here, that stand out? And for, you know, watching it the first time, you know, I watched it a couple times this week, and watching it the first time, you know, the last like 15-20 minutes of this movie are super intense. The whole movie is intense, but like the it's not until the last like 15 minutes that you kind of sit up in your seat and you're like, okay, this is gripping, you know? Yeah. But, you know, then watching again the second time, knowing kind of the characters that I need to be paying attention to, you see a lot more the second time you watch it. Like, I mean, it opens with, you know, the Nazi general and like a torture scene, but it's very subtle, you know what I mean? But it does, you know, it does introduce a thread that continues to the end, you know, that I didn't really catch the first time I watched it. And so, yeah, there's all of that stuff. And like, you know, I did watch The Great Dictator sometime last year, and that kind of helped also frame my mind for this movie. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a really good watch. But again, you have to kind of like have it framed for you and be, you know, be ready to kind of dive into a history lesson. Because this is, I guess, in the genre of Italian Neo-Realism, right? So this is a film that, that's the Italian Neo-Realism. Like, I only know that term because of film school. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have figured that out on my own. But like, Italian Neo-Realism and I probably sound a lot smarter than I actually am right now, but from what I understand, Italian Neo-Realism is like this very specific genre from Italian filmmaking that was right after World War II, and the Nazis lost and went home, and Italian filmmakers were making films that were about them right then. You know, it wasn't about the past or the future. It was about the present and what they had just gone through and what they were going through at the time. So it was very expressive and real and representative of the time, I guess, you know. So it's and that makes the ending so impactful, you know. It makes it feel very real, and you know, the actor Aldo Fabrizi, who plays the priest, is incredible. You know, I mean, you can't get away from that. Like, no, like even if you did watch this movie passively and couldn't get into it, that last scene, those last couple of scenes, like the 10 minutes at the end, like, I would be surprised if anybody wasn't gripped by that.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, that's kind of where I'm sitting with it.
Yeah.
I think, again, it's you can tell it's an important film and everything, and I think if you're kind of studying the history of World War II, this should be on your watch list.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say, like, that I could recommend this to anybody else that wasn't like trying to do a history study.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, you're gonna enjoy this, or like, you know what I mean?
I know.
Like, because it is hard to get into the characters and stuff. I mean, they feel real. Everything feels real, but like it's a lot to keep track of in your head. Like you know, you're gonna have to sit. You're gonna have to come to this movie ready to take notes and keep track of everything. Yeah. How about you?
I think I probably came at it from the right time, or you know, in my kind of, because I know that we've been talking last episode, and I said that I've recently read Five Came Back, about the 5 Hollywood filmmakers that went off to document the war.
Yeah.
So I already had a framing device in my head for this film. I could already like place it quite, you know, with where it was supposed to be, I guess. So it was just bleeding into what I've been interested in at the moment, which is war on the screen, especially the Second World War. So this kind of was perfect for me at this time, you know. Rossellini is someone that I have watched a few films of, a personal hero of mine, not just because of the films he made, but because he wooed Ingrid Bergman with just his cinematic style, which is like the dream of someone that is, you know, into movies, is a beautiful woman would, you know, discover your genius and just leave everything for you.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that this works on a lot of levels. I think that the neo-realism that you were talking about, you know, it doesn't linger on anything. It's very as life is, which is exactly what neo-realism is. When, I mean, there's going to be spoilers because we're going to talk about plot points and stuff, but when Pina does get killed, it is like she is literally just like pulled out of the street and that's it.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of just how it would have been, I guess.
Yeah, there's no like meaning to it. There's no like even as far as the movie's plot goes, it like usually when a death happens, it impacts a character in a certain way where they have to change something or they you know, have to rebel against, but it's like it doesn't really do anything for the plot. It doesn't change the characters' paths in any way. It doesn't impact the film. It just happens, and then more stuff happens.
Yeah, it just shows that they're kind of so dedicated to the cause that they can't grieve.
Yeah.
You know, or that grieving's become a part of their life.
Every day,
Yeah, and I think it's a very telling thing that we don't linger on it. The film itself, because us, the viewer, we're given, kind of after that happens, we're given a break of like a couple of seconds, but it's like end of part 1, and then it's into part 2.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, we're given that like minute to just like breathe and, and kind of move on from it, I guess. Yeah. But I think what is really interesting about this film, and something that on the second viewing I paid a lot of attention to, is the representation of the women in here.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Because it's set up a lot, the male characters are the ones that are kind of hiding from the Nazis, and they're the ones trying to get these messages across and kind of, live in the underworld. But the women either are the ones that kind of are affected by it the most, apart from, Don Pellegrini, or are the architects of the destruction. They're the ones that kind of bring them down. Which is, I think, again, really interesting. There's obviously hints of like, there's hints of like, that they're the kind of pulling the strings, and I'm not sure if that's the culture of like Italian culture of the mother is the head of the household,
right,
or if that's just something that Rossellini is very interested in, is the role of women. There's also like lesbianism in there as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of kind of, I don't know, there's a lot of themes around women in this.
Yeah, that was something I noticed the second time around as well, was like, there was a lot more like progressive stuff about women in the film.
Yeah.
I think it's going to take a few more watches to really be able to see all the subtle hints that are there, because I think there's a lot more there than I'm catching. Yeah. And raised a lot of questions too, especially the kind of the villainous female character. Is I still don't quite understand her, like her motives and like what the relationship was between her and the other woman. Because at the end, it seems like she's kind of in love with this woman. Maybe like there's a hint there, and then at the end she like walks over to the woman who I can't remember anybody's name in the movie, but basically there's a woman who's kind of she's like a famous woman or something, I don't know. But she's kind of betrays the two men or whatever, gives them up, and then she faints at the end, and then the villainous woman like almost walks over, and you think she's gonna help her, but then she just like picks up her fur coat off of her and like walks off. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, there's like I still don't know what that means really, or what that character is representing, or
because because their relationship is very weird. I mean, Mariana is the woman I think that faints, who gives them up and kind of faints at the end, and she, she's shown to have like a drug problem. She's kind of, she has that bottle of whatever it is in her purse.
Dentist medicine.
Yeah. And I think that this Nazi spy is kind of providing that for her. I think that's the implication.
Yeah.
As well as other things for her services back, because they work in like a nightclub, and it's, the other character that she shares a room with is seen being escorted back by like a Nazi officer. So I think it's very heavily implied that they're kind of like prostitutes.
Yeah.
Or something. So I think that the Nazi female is using her for information, but also sex.
Yeah.
Which again I think just talks about the Rome at that time. It was very, people are just doing what they have to do to get by.
Yeah.
The men all seem to be kind of plotting the downfall of the Nazis, and the women are either, having kids or selling themselves.
Yeah.
What else could they do?
Yeah. 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 It is, it is very progressive in the terms of like the diversity of female characters that are there, as far as their I mean, the characters that women get to play, I guess, you know, because like there's, especially for the time for 1945, because I mean, if you're an American and you grew up watching American movies, 1945 is going to be a year that is a lot more. I don't know what the right word is. Tame, I guess.
Yeah.
You know,
celebratory as well. Like we just won the war. Woohoo!
Yeah. You know, but like, you know, when people talk about like diversity or representation in film, like it's not just about like, oh, we need more women on screen or we need more people of color on screen. It's more about like, in the past, representation and diversity has been like, oh, well, we're gonna make the African slave movie, you know, there's your representation, or we're gonna make, you know, or you know, we've got a gay person here, you know, and they're like the likable moral character, you know, trying to like basically just show diversity as like always positive, you know, whatever. But like a lot of people want to be able to be represented as having as many diverse emotions as you know the human condition allows. You know, so like they still want to be able to have questionable morals and have, you know, all the things that come with being a human. They want to be represented as a person, you know, and this film kind of allows that. Like it allows, there's a diverse characters of women in this movie, you know, that you've got Pina, who is, you know, the motherly character, a very strong woman character, but and you know, and kind of like on the good side of things, you know, but then you have, you know, these other characters that are villainous or kind of in between, you know, both. So like that's and also, you know, it does show a lot more skin than I think I've seen in a film from this time too, and so all of these things probably are because it's not an American movie. Is what I'm basically getting at. And cool to see that these things kind of exist and have existed. You know, diversity has existed in a way. I mean, it's not all the way there, of course, but like, you know, I think if you're a filmmaker trying to lean in that direction and explore what that means, this is a good film to kind of check out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it never once feels like it's been added to kind of tick a box.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know? 100%
which unfortunately is what a lot of Hollywood films are doing today. It's like they're just ticking a box instead of actually exploring what it means to have representation, you know?
I feel like for the past 5 years, every time Disney release a film, whatever it is, it's like Disney's first openly gay character. And it's like, I feel like we've been doing this for so long that it's just kind of, it doesn't mean anything anymore.
Yeah.
Every film seems to have they take it a step further. It's like, this character is gay. This character has a husband. This character now, like, is seen kissing someone of the same sex. You know? It's like, stop, just, if it, you know, just work it into the, like, just, I don't know. I don't need to be told that this, you know, we're doing something good. Just do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. But again, it's not, you know, the female characters, like you said, aren't all like the winners of the film. You know, they are struggling.
Yeah, they're not all like strong, powerful female characters. Like there is that in the movie, but it's like also there's weak ones and there's ones with questionable morals and motives and you know.
Of course. Yeah. When Pina dies, it is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
it's unfortunately it's something that I have seen before. Like we were talking with Passion of Joan of Arc. Whenever Italian Neo-Realism is discussed, this is kind of like a cornerstone, along with like Bicycle Thieves and others. It's kind of like wheeled out, and that scene especially is something I've seen numerous times. So, as soon as I saw Pina, I knew that she was going to unfortunately die. But I mean, it's just heartbreaking, especially with all the build-up. She talks about being pregnant, and she obviously has a child, and the upcoming marriage. And there's that wonderful scene of them on the steps where they're talking about when they first met and kind of, the day before their wedding. And then, it's just, it is heartbreaking. But just shows, how important this is to these people. Her fiance is still like sad the next day, but it's like, we just got to do it. Like, we've got to keep going, And to what end?
Yeah.
They don't achieve anything really. They're all kind of either tortured or killed.
Yeah, but there is that scene that kind of frames the whole purpose of the film, I guess, or the purpose of the of not being a traitor, and for not I don't know, for holding on to your integrity, I guess, is that they're doing it for their children, for the future of their country and for their descendants, really, and for tomorrow. There's like that whole scene where it's like, and I think it might be in that same scene where they're kind of talking about the first time they met, right? I don't know, somewhere around there. But yeah, there's basically just like a couple of lines where it's like they're saying that it's for tomorrow and for the future of their children and stuff.
Yeah.
Of course, Pina dies and her child along with it, but she still has another child that lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at the end there's like the group of boys that are there when the priest is executed. There is hope for the future, and obviously this came out right after there was hope.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, you can just tell that the film was probably everything to them.
Yeah, yeah. It did really well in France, which had also been occupied, and then liberated. So that theme of kind of, just fighting against things that are kind of walling you in. The oppression and stuff like that is obviously paramount. And I think with the kids especially, you get that there is that hope, like you said, that they're going out into the night and kind of blowing things up, and then sneaking back into the building. So there is that hope that they will kind of carry on the fight. It doesn't end with the deaths in this film. It's just passed on to the next generation.
Yeah.
But like Dom Pellegrini is very interesting.
Yeah, he is the movie.
He is the movie. I feel that there is definitely a line that he walks in terms of religion. There's a lot of conversations around, why is this happening to us? And he's like, maybe we deserved it. Maybe, this is kind of, we're having to pay for something. And it's, which is, as we've said when we've discussed religious films before, something that you ask a lot is why is this happening to me? And instead of being like, it's just a test, there's that point where it's like, well, maybe it's not a test, maybe we deserve this.
Yeah.
Which seems to be the next step before a defeatist attitude, Yeah. And it seems that he uses I could be very wrong, but it seems like he uses religion as more of an aid to kind of help in the resistance. He's the one that's allowed out after curfew.
Yeah, exactly.
And things like that. He uses it as like a cover to get this completed,
Yeah, it's like a disguise.
Yeah.
Almost.
But
his faith still feels real.
Yeah, exactly.
Like he's so remorseful even at the end when he curses the Nazis. He's like, forgive me for saying that, Lord.
Yeah.
You know.
Hmm.
But it is kind of crazy that like he is like the character that brings so much emotion into the movie, so much human emotion and a range of emotion.
Yeah.
But he also is bringing, which is also an emotion, he's bringing like the comedy as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy. He's bringing both ends of the spectrum to the film. And, you know, because the first time you get introduced to him, he's like playing soccer with the boys and he's kind of like a buffoon in a way, you know, and the ball like hits his head and stuff. And then you get the scene where he like, with the statues where he's like trying to turn them to where like the one statue's not looking at the other one, the naked statue or whatever. So, I mean, that's just brilliant, like character storytelling from the filmmaker and the actor collaboration, you know.
And I think that it's very telling that Pope Francis listed this as one of his favorite films. You know, one of the most religious people in the world found this as one of his favorite films. Which I'm sure there's a lot of depths and like comments on religion that you know we don't necessarily get. Which is so interesting.
I was wondering at the end why the soldiers why they shoot at the ground when they're shooting at the Pellegrini, and then you know then the officer has to come in and shoot him. Like I wasn't sure what the reason was.
I mean, I can't imagine, you know, even like we think of Nazis as, you know, I mean, they are, you know, the epitome of evil. But it's, you know, there's got to be people in there that still have at least some
humanity.
Morals. And like, I just imagine, you know, especially, you know, religion was used to kind of stir the crowd and stuff like that in Nazism. So to shoot a priest is not an easy thing to do. As a, you know, if that's maybe what they were going at, just that this is like a line that is not easy to cross even for Nazis. You know.
Maybe.
Try and give them at least a little bit of humanity. I don't know, because it's very. I mean, it's very bleak, and so it should be.
Well, if anybody out there has any ideas or thoughts on that moment, please leave them in the comments, either on our Spotify or our YouTube or anywhere. Instagram posts.
That's right.
I'm curious about that.
So, I mean, the neo-realism, like we were saying, is very, very evident in here. I think there's like, we get shown a lot that we wouldn't normally show. Like the torture sequence towards the end is kind of very graphic and doesn't kind of pull away. You know, you would have thought that in Hollywood films, you would have just seen the blowtorch getting close and then the
and then
the
cut
prisoner,
away to just the sound.
fainting.
Yeah.
Whereas here we kind of shown a lot more, which they can get away with, and which is more stirring.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, it makes you feel very ill.
Yeah. Not quite as ill, maybe, as some of the violence on screen today, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, now it just seems like cartoony. You know, things that, but this feels very real. You know, like with Peanut, it's just kind of like one or two shots that brings it down. You know, it's just not like slow motion kind of.
Yeah.
And then the torture scene is like, it's the same. It just feels very real and uncomfortable. Yeah. And there's that horrible line of, the Italians scream so much or whatever that the Nazi general says, which is also awful.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Yeah. Do you have any other points that you want to make about Rome Open City, Brandon?
I mean, I don't know. I always see like Tarantino's influences in films. And I feel like, I mean, I don't know for a fact, but I mean, I can't help but see some things that I have seen in Inglourious Bastards in this film, you know. I mean, it could just be because it's World War II, but just like the female characters and the torture scenes and, you know, the evil Nazi general and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad we watched it. I mean...
Me too.
As I said in the beginning, sometimes I'm resistant towards the amount of studying I need to do when it comes to films like this, but it's... I always get so much out of it.
Yeah, and I think that it puts it in such a good context that, you know, this was kind of written and written while Rome was still occupied, and then by the time they made it, it had been liberated. So there was already that air of like reflection, but it was still written in such an oppressive time. Yeah, you know, and something that I found out when I was putting the notes together, Fellini has a writing credit.
Ah.
So he assisted, you know, he was part of this group that, you know, the neo-realists that were taking over Italian cinema, but he was there from the very start of it, you know. Yeah. And I think got an Oscar for the script.
Wow.
So, yeah, there's that link there, which I didn't know, which I thought was
That's
interesting.
Cool.
Yeah. I think that if you do have, like you say, if you do have an interesting kind of cinema around the war and kind of a representation that isn't an American view, this is a good place to start.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely,
it definitely presents it in a great way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's guess what the other person rated this on Letterboxd.
Let's do it. I'm gonna say that you rated it 4.5.
Okay. I'm gonna say that you rated it 3.5.
All right.
I did rate it 4.5.
Nice. I rated it 4.
Okay, cool.
I think that especially watching it the second time and having this discussion, but also just the ending is really, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the movie just means so much.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was kind of one of those that I just couldn't wait to go back and watch it a second time.
Yeah.
You know, which normally tells me that it did something for me.
Yeah.
You know, it stirred something inside. So yeah. It's a good one.
It's good.
I'm excited to check out more, especially finish this war trilogy, like you said, with Paisan.
Yeah.
There's another that I can't think of the top of my head, but definitely excited to kind of check the other ones out.
Yeah. Have you seen Paisan?
I haven't.
Yeah.
I do know there's a great Criterion, like Fellini's War trilogy, which I'm very close to pulling the trigger on.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, what are we going to be watching next week, Brandon?
Well, next week, we're going to be doing some more film studying. It's a film that I have never seen. There's a festival happening around this film here in Houston in a few months. So I kind of want to check it out before the festival happens. It's Metropolis from 1927.
Oh, my God.
It's one I've never seen. I mean, it's iconic. It's another one of those films that, like, you know, in film history you always see images of. I mean, wasn't C-3PO based on the cover? Yeah. So like, yeah. I mean, it's one of those films that, again, it's like, okay, well, I know I need to watch it, but unless I force myself to, I might not. So that's what I'm doing.
Well, I'm very excited.
I know you're excited because you've seen it before. It's just right up your alley.
It is.
So
yeah,
I'm excited to kind of break it down and see what I connect with here in this film.
Perfect. Well, that'll be next week, and I cannot wait to talk to you about that. But that does bring us to the end of the show. As mentioned, you can find the show on Twitter and Instagram at Film Church Radio, and you can follow us individually on Letterboxd. Brandon is at Selman Scope, and I am at Walker Lewis 3007 to keep up with what we've been watching. We also have all our back episodes streaming on all good podcast platforms, so go ahead and leave us a rating and review so we know if you like the film, if you didn't, and what you would pick for us to watch in the future. Thank you so much for being here. We love the fact that anybody's listening, so thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, we are here every Sunday, so make sure to join us next week for more Film Church. The only thing left to say is, doesn't Christ see us?
So many people ask me that. Doesn't Christ see us? But are we sure we haven't deserved this scourge? Are we sure we've always lived according to the Lord's laws? People never think of changing their ways, but when the piper must be paid, they despair and ask, doesn't the Lord see us? Doesn't he take pity on us? Yes, he does. But we have so much to be forgiven for, and for that we must pray and forgive many things.
You're right, but how do we forgive? I see those guys and I want to smash their faces in. Amen to that. Amen to smashing in the faces of Nazis.
That's right.
We'll see you all next week. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye!